PAPs, for anyone who's gone through them, the meeting can be overwhelming. It's great to go in and meet with your entire team, but sometimes they're done relatively quickly and you have to be pretty organized.
This is the Special Needs Mama in Business podcast. My mission is to empower you to advocate for your special needs child from a place of hope. I do that by sharing stories of other families that have been on this road before you, discussing alternative therapies, and talking about how you can have the time and money you need to care for your child by owning a business. Are you ready? Let's go! Welcome to this episode of Special Needs Mama in Business. Today we're talking with Laura Epstein, married mom of 3 little boys and owner of the Messy Bun Boutique and Messy Bun Life blog. And she is just stellar at all the things she's doing. And I have so many questions and I'm so excited to chat with her today. Welcome, Laura. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited too.
First, let's give everyone a little bit of background of what brings you to the special needs community.
So I have 3 boys. I have just turned 7-year-old last week, and I have twin 4-year-olds. My 7-year-old has autism. He was diagnosed when he was about 3.5. So we've been on that journey. He's absolutely fantastic. He's, a smart, perky, happy boy who just also happens to have autism. So we're working on that journey together to make sure he's doing great in school. We just started school and great in everything else.
Well, happy birthday to him.
Thank you.
And congratulations to you for surviving 7 years.
Yeah, just barely. Especially with the twins, really.
Oh, yes. That's quite a handful. I mean, it's kind of both are a lot of handfuls, just in really different ways.
Very, very much so. Very much.
So did you always kind of know that there was something a little bit different about your son, or was it something that set on a little bit later? I'm curious to know a little bit more about what that journey looked like.
Sure. He was my first. He's my oldest. So there are things looking back that I'm like, oh yeah, that definitely, we should have noticed that. But of course you shouldn't, because he's our oldest. We used to go to music classes, and instead of participating, he'd be listening, but he'd be walking all around to these very pretty walls he had and totally focused on these walls that they had, while at the same time listening, but he didn't have any interest in sitting and listening to the person. He would listen in his head, but really was absolutely obsessed with, they had these beautiful, colorful walls with pictures of the outside on it. There were also he had sensory issues pretty early on that we didn't initially pick up on. And then when he was in preschool at about 2, they came to us, the preschool, and said, I think he could use some occupational therapy. We really, we don't diagnose or a school, but, it'd be great if you could get him some occupational therapy, because he seems to be having some sensory issues and motor planning. He's accidentally, sitting on other kids. It was an array of really strange kind of symptoms. At the same time, we got really lucky that our general pediatrician happened to have a child the same age. And we took soccer together. And when we take soccer, Ross would walk into the room and start screaming because it was too loud. He'd literally run out. Taking soccer is a little bit of an overstatement. We walked into the gym. There were, big fluorescent lights and too much noise, and he'd go running out. Our pediatrician said, I think it's worth getting on the wait list for a developmental pediatrician. I'm seeing some things that I'm worried about. The funny part was my response was, well, at least he's not autistic since he talks all the time. Which is, in addition to being a really ridiculous thing to say, was so totally misunderstanding the situation.
Yeah.
Because he does. He talks all the time, but he doesn't. He doesn't talk to you. He talks at you. So, we've worked on that. He's in speech therapy. So that sort of started our journey. We went to the developmental pediatrician from OT. We also added speech to work on those speech pragmatics. Eventually we had a diagnosis. The private school we were in couldn't support him anymore.
Yeah.
So we moved to the suburbs to get him in a great public school where he has absolutely thrived. He went for 2 years to a blended classroom where it had part kids with identified needs and some kids from the community, which was just absolutely great for him. And now he is actually mainstreamed, which is amazing. Thinking back 3 years ago when they said your child would never be mainstreamed, when the private school said that. So he's mainstream. He gets a lot of support. starting school. We're figuring out exactly what support he needs for this year. But, he's doing great. And once, we're still figuring it out as he gets older, the symptoms change. A lot of things that we thought were sensory may really be anxiety. So we're working with that now. That's an easy thing to work on with him as he's getting older and can tell us more. That's been like a really exciting thing when he can tell us he's anxious. That was a huge step because he would know to step away from situations as opposed to just pushing through and then having a meltdown. So we made a lot of progress.
Even having that awareness to be able to identify how you're feeling.
Yes, it's been huge.
Sure I could have identified what anxiety felt like until I was in my teens. So that's pretty profound.
No. He says it in different ways. He doesn't really quite say I'm anxious.
Right.
So he did. The other day he walked into a social worker and he said, I'm nervous to start school. And both of us are just like, this is amazing.
Profound.
This is what we are working towards. And then, they talked about it. They pulled up a class list and, they talked, that's why she's there. But it's great that he can now start to use those supports that he has, that we've tried to give him the best support, but now he's really coming back and, being able to utilize those really well.
Yeah, that's really great. In your journey with him, has there ever been a time where you really had to put your foot down and advocate for him over a specific thing or anything like that? Or have you felt like you've been really well supported by your medical team?
We've been well supported by our medical team. We waited 14 months to get into developmental pediatrician.
Oh, wow, that's
just the wait. That's the wait around here. So from that aspect, we had to kind of do things by ourselves. We had to figure out the OT. We had a fabulous OT who really kind of ran the show, figured out what he needed. We struggled with his first school. They asked for eventually an aide, which we didn't think was the best, but we tried it. And, it's not always the best way to go because you want your child to be as independent as possible. And he very much relied solely on the aide to help him. So eventually basically fought with the school for a while and eventually pulled him from there. And almost immediately all these meltdowns he was having stopped. The school, it was just not the right school for him. It was just a little too chaotic. It was a private preschool that just didn't have the supports that he could get in a public preschool.
Yeah.
Thankfully we were able to pull him and we just we hung out. We pulled him at spring break and hung out for a couple months while we moved. And then he was able to just start the next fall in a more supportive community. But then we had to, move all of his OT and everything out here too.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Definitely a challenge.
Reestablishing all those relationships and everything.
Exactly. And for a while, we were just transporting him to the city several times a week just to try to ease that transition.
Yeah. I imagine that was probably a really difficult challenge for him to have so much change of now he's living in a new place, he's going to be going to a new school, and now all of these therapists that he's established these relationships with were starting over. That must have been pretty stressful.
It was a huge transition. I mean, we sort of bribed him into liking moving. Objectively, having grown up in the city for his first 3 years, our house was bigger. He actually walked into the backyard the first time and said, "Oh, we live next to a park. Is this whole patio ours?" And I said, "No, everything in the fence is ours." And we don't live on a estate, but by Chicago standards, we have a yard, which he'd never had a yard before. So we sort of bribed him into kind of liking the physical aspects of it so that at least that was okay.
I get my own grass?
He didn't even think the whole patio was his. He said, "Is this whole patio ours?" Because at our old house, we lived in a townhome where we shared a patio.
Oh man, that's
so we tried to find ways. Our new house had Disney Junior. The old house didn't. So we tried to find ways to make it fun. So to try to take his mind off those transitions, and we schlepped to the city the whole summer. We moved in the spring. And we were like, we'll just keep going to the OT till we can kind of ease into a new speech therapist. And then once he got going that fall with school, everything changed. Just being in the right school community made all the difference in him really being able to grow. And he has a funny birthday. He's August 31st, which where we live, the cutoff to start school is September 1st. Oh. So it left us in a bit of a predicament of whether to hold him or not. Thankfully, we live in a district that was fine with our decision either way. there are districts around here that will not give you that extra year. We have a system of like a co-op for special ed. So they actually have to pay the co-op for my son to go an extra year. Thankfully, they left the decision up to us, but we hemmed and hawed for like 6 months about whether to hold him. We ended up holding him, and it was like the best decision ever. 3-4 months after we held him and he was in this amazing preschool, his growth, his ability to like really interact with other kids changed. And we were just so happy we held him and were able to give him that extra time, despite there were some concerns because he is relatively intelligent, that he wouldn't be challenged enough. But my husband and our opinion was we don't care if he's academically challenged. This is not why we'd be holding him. We'd be holding him to get those social skills so that he could, hope to kind of hold his own a little bit in kindergarten. And it was absolutely the right decision, but we went back and forth forever. And my husband's an August birthday, and he's the worst example, which is he actually was held and then had to be pushed forward.
No.
So yeah, so he was not, he knew that didn't work for him, though.
Yeah.
30 years ago, it was very different, in terms of how they don't hold and push people forward as lightly as they do now, or as they did then.
So I saw on your blog, The Messy Bun Life, that you have a free resource tool for IEPs. Mine is only 16 months and we're planning to homeschool. So that's not something I can really speak to, but I know a lot of my audience is dealing with those kinds of things. Can you tell me a little bit about that resource and maybe some of the challenges that you've experienced in trying to prepare IEPs and all that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, IEPs, for anyone who's gone through them, the meeting can be overwhelming. It's great to go in and meet with your entire team, but sometimes they're done relatively quickly and you have to be pretty organized. So my IEP planner is literally that. It's a worksheet. So it's, it tells you what things you should bring, because they might not have a copy of things you need. They're not going to have a copy necessarily of the old IEP. You've got to figure out where you put that on your desk. And then it just gives some basic questions, like what are you, just to think about before the meeting. Because once you get in the meeting, it could be, they have their own agenda. And it's not that their agenda is wrong. It's just, it's not your agenda. The kid, your child the best. So the worksheet kind of talks you through what are my goals for this meeting, what was done at this meeting, and what do I need to either monitor or follow up on after it. And, we've not had bad IEP meetings per se, but we certainly don't always agree with the school district. Especially at the beginning, we very strongly believed he should be in a blended classroom. And their first reaction was to put him in an instructional or self-contained classroom just because he had come from a school with an aide and they were concerned. I am lucky that my mother-in-law is actually a former special ed teacher and administrator, so she comes to meetings with me. So she tends to know those intricacies of kind of the law and what order things should go in, and acts as an informal advocate. She always says, she's like, I'm not an advocate, but she kind of is. She doesn't want to be the advocate. She's the bubby. She's the grandma. She is there to know some of the things that I just don't know. As a parent, you don't know what the district has to offer. You don't know what legally they have to offer. And there are, you have to know what questions to ask. So the planner, the worksheet's just sort of there to help you think in advance, because sometimes once you get there are a lot of people and, they're going through their agenda, but it's nice to know in advance kind of what you're looking for, what your concerns are, what your questions are. We once had an IEP meeting with 14 people in it.
Oh, wow.
It was ridiculous.
That sounds overwhelming.
It was totally overwhelming. It was because we were switching programs. He was switching from this co-op preschool, which is all the combined districts, over to our district preschool. So we had 2 speech therapists and 2 OTs and 2 everything. But it's I find it sometimes easy to lose my voice if I'm not sure what my voice is, what I need to say in advance. And also just even if other people are talking, I grab my worksheet and I start kind of filling out what questions I have, because obviously other people are talking, and what concerns I have. And it's nice to have a place that at the end, if they need reports or there's just certain things you want to talk to the speech therapist or the occupational therapist about, it's nice to have a place where you can just concisely write what you need to follow up on.
And I would imagine that those meetings can get kind of emotional as a parent for a variety of reasons. And so
I
I
think
feel
I've
like,
cried in most of them.
yeah,
I always walk into, I'm like, I will not cry, will not cry. It's not always bad. It's, we
it's
had a
just
meeting at the end of his
emotional for whatever
kindergarten.
reason. Yeah. And so I feel like
Absolutely.
having a tool where you can like keep yourself grounded of like, this is the point, this is the purpose, and to like keep track of your questions. So like, I don't know, for me, when I get emotional, I lose all track of what like I was trying to accomplish. So I feel like that's really helpful for those kinds of meetings. So how does the IEP system, like, do you have those meetings like once a year? Are they several times a year? How does that work?
They're primarily once. You'll have an annual review every year. Certain other meetings occur, like when you start, you'll have a meeting to qualify usually, and then a meeting to put together a program. Sometimes if there's a change of placement, like when he started kindergarten, we had a meeting 6 weeks in. I think last year we had 3 meetings. One 6 weeks in to double check how he was doing, make sure everyone was on the same page. And then we had one because some of his reports were getting older. So we had to legally figure out what tests he needed. And then we had the annual review. So some of them are relatively quick. They're very like protocol. They're like, we're going to run this speech report. We're going to run this OT screening. Is that okay? It's like, sure. And then some of them are more, this is what we've done in the last year, which can be emotional if you made a lot of progress. And then it is trying to figure out the next year how to best support your child, which is just a big hypothetical. And like, exactly like you said, when you get emotional, it's easy to forget what you're doing and walk out of there and say, oh, I meant to tell them this, and I meant to ask this question.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of various reasons to have an IEP meeting, but generally it's the annual review is the big one, or like a change of placement.
Like a really valuable resource. So we'll definitely link that in the show notes if that's something that you want to check out. What questions, if a mom has an IEP coming up for her child, maybe it's her first one, what questions should she ask that she might not think to ask?
I think a great question to ask is what are my child's strengths? I think there are IEP meetings where that gets brought up. And I think there are meetings where it gets washed over. And sometimes at meetings, you have people who've never met your child and you're talking only about kind of the concerns. And I think it's important for the admins and other people to remember that this is a whole child who has a lot of really important strengths as well. Yeah, I think that's a great question. Another one is, how will this change during the school year? We've put into some of the IEPs where a support will kind of twilight as the school year goes on. At the beginning of last year, we thought he was going to need support in the car line. I have to go through the car line because I have 2 other kids in the car, so I can't get them out of the car. I could, but it's really, I don't want to. We'll put it that way. I don't want to have to get the twins out of the car and walk them all over to the playground. And we thought he might need some support. So I was like, well, what if he doesn't? And they're like, okay, we'll put in the IEP that if after 3 weeks he no longer needs the support, we will pull it, which is an important thing to put in there because an IEP is a legally binding document. If the IEP says the support has to be there, the school has to give it. But sometimes your child doesn't actually need it anymore. And we always want to give them what they need, but not necessarily more. We want to create the independence.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good question to ask about any goal that you might think they halfway through the year they might not need. And of course you could call another IEP meeting and say, but sometimes it's just easier instead of saying, calling a meeting to get rid of a goal. It's easier to just put in there, if this is fine, you don't need to do it anymore. And that is exactly what happened. This car line we thought was going to be a big deal. We thought, he'd never gone to a car line with 150 cars and had to jump out. And, it's almost like a stop, drop, and roll thing out of the car. Some of these people go quick. Turned out he was fine. So partway into the school year, the IEP said, oh, if you don't need it, you don't need it. They said, we're not going to have someone there because he just ignores that person and runs right to the playground. I think that's a good one to ask. But yeah, especially the strengths. I feel like some of these IEP meetings just gloss over your child's strengths, which could be, in addition to a little demoralizing for the parent, it's great for everyone to remember that this is a whole child. This isn't just a concern.
I love your blog, The Messy Bun Life, and we'll link to that also in the show notes. But I am the aesthetics of it are amazing and definitely have inspired me to take a second look at my aesthetics.
Well, I relatively recently redid it.
How long have you been blogging?
About 1.5 years. but the aesthetics you're talking about are about 2 months old.
Oh, okay.
So I definitely went back and redid. When you start, it's different than when you are a year in and you kind of know what you want it to look like and you know what you want to highlight. So yeah, I did a little bit of an overhaul a month or two ago.
Well, it looks great. And I love, like, there's so many great resources. I was just reading over the blog about taking your autistic child to Disney World, and like, there's so many great resources in that blog post about things that I wouldn't think to even ask about or know about. And so there's so many great resources. So I appreciate the value that you provide there, but I'm curious how your blogging journey got started.
It's a good question. One day I was just like, I want to share what we're doing. I want to share with other people so that they can have that like Me Too moment. That's always a lot of my blog posts. I'm trying to, help people feel like their experience is not alone. Like something like I have a post about the signs you're an autism mom, and it's gotten a really good feedback of people just being like, oh I didn't know other people got these, felt this way. I didn't know. I have one about questions you shouldn't ask an autism mom. And I get a lot of feedback about, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one people ask these questions to. Like, nope, you're probably not. It can be isolating as a special needs parent, as I'm sure you know. So I think having as many websites and blogs we can that like bring us all together and remind us that we are not alone.
Yeah.
That we, our experiences, while unique, are, similar to other people's, and really can, hope to, I think that was my hope when I started. It was just to be able to share with other people my journey and hopefully be able to like give them insight. Like my trip to Disney World had a lot of mistakes. We've gone twice now, and the first one was a little bit of a disaster, but he had fun and all my kids had fun. So like my hope is just to give everyone, more support and learn from my mistakes too.
I love the sense of community that it sounds like that this was created for you specifically, but it sounds like for your followers as well, which is great. So, and then you also are the owner of Messy Bun Boutique, which is gorgeous. I'm definitely putting some items on there for my Christmas wish list. How did that all come about?
So that started, I've been doing that for almost 4 years, 3.5, 4 years. I was initially actually a LuLaRoe consultant. When I moved to the suburbs, had a little extra time with the kids and said, I need to do something that isn't in the house. And I hadn't found the blogging. That came a little later. That wasn't my idea yet. My idea was I wanted to sell clothes. After a while, LuLaRoe no longer fit my needs. So I became an independent boutique, which has given me just like so much freedom in what I'm carrying. I carry funny mugs and a lot of graphic t-shirts, mostly because that's what I'm always wearing. And that's what, moms wear. Like I always joke, like my boutique is sort of hashtag mom style. It's the comfortable clothes that like are the leggings. They're not fancy dresses, but thick leggings that aren't going to rip halfway through the day. We call them pixie pants. They're like really thick leggings, and the graphic tees that are fun and just stuff moms will want to wear, or non-moms too, but just the stuff that's fun and some stuff for when you're a little fancier, a lot of like longer dresses. We're not like mini skirts. I'm not a mini skirt wearer. I like a nice, length dress so that if a child comes up and starts yanking on it, I'm not, these are literally my concerns with twin 4-year-olds, especially when they were younger. They always ask me why I'm wearing 2 shirts. And I'm like, well, because one's under there for when you inevitably start pulling on the first one. But yeah, that was sort of my goal in creating this independent boutique, was just to bring what people were looking for.
I love it. And how long were you a LuLaRoe consultant before?
About 2 years, actually. I kind of phased it out as I phased in the independent boutique. And I have no like hard feelings towards LuLaRoe. It just no longer fit what I was trying to do with my boutique. It no longer fit like our lifestyle, really. It was a little higher paced I needed to be. And my husband took a new job where he was working more. So having an independent boutique gave me even more freedom to, if I knew September was going to be busy. Then I didn't order as much inventory, and it's my business, so no one else cares.
So you started your own, like being a business owner around the time that your son was born, or was there something before that too?
No, I actually started it when he was about 2.5.
Oh, okay.
So I think I was first just totally overwhelmed with being a parent, as a lot of parents were. Before having kids, I actually did own a totally unrelated business. I was a personal trainer and personal trained independently. So I had some experience just, doing bookkeeping and stuff like that. That wasn't new to me. But this was definitely, both of these ventures, the blog and the boutique, were really different, but in like a new and exciting way for me.
Yeah. So was it that you wanted to stay home with your kids and that's what kind of inspired you to have these businesses, or have you always kind of had the bug of owning your own business?
I've always had the bug of owning my own business. It's really bad. I was trying to fill out a resume for a position that I was interested in, like a part-time position, and everything's self-employed. I don't know. It's always just really worked for me. And I mean, when I worked as a personal trainer, I worked full-time, like super full-time. That wasn't really why. I just really enjoy the freedom. And, my husband's always like, you have hustle. Like, I have no hustle. I have the hustle to go sell the personal training and like make people love your blog or like your clothes. So I think that's part of it. But yes, being able to stay home yet still contribute is absolutely fantastic.
Has there been any maybe unexpected benefits to being a business owner because when you started all this, you didn't know that you were going to be a special needs mom, but now that you are, and mom to twins, which is almost like a special needs mom in and of itself. In all of that, have there been some unexpected benefits to being a business owner?
Well, it's been interesting to watch my kids' reactions to it. My 7-year-old actually helps me pull clothes, which he really enjoys. I'll show him a picture and he'll go through the racks and he'll find it. And he's like very proud of the fact mom has a job, mom owns a business. And if you ask him, he will say he owns a business and mom works for him, which I'm like, are you going to pay me? But you have to pay people a salary if they work for you, Rossi.
On Friday, bud.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it's been, and the twins know I write, and people like recognize things I write around here sometimes. And they're like, oh, I like that post, and they're proud of it, which has been nice. Cause it's, to have something that they're proud of me for doing, and they understand a little bit of what I'm doing. And it's just adorable to watch my son pull clothes. It's the funniest thing. He will get mad at me if he knows that I shipped stuff when he wasn't home. Do not tell him I ship 90% when he's at school, because I just save him a couple. But he loves to go through the racks and find what we're looking for and ask me, why this person bought this and not that one. I'm like, I don't know. But he has a lot of questions. So it's nice. It's become a little bit of a family thing. When I used to do more lives, my husband would also pop in sometimes. I needed someone to kind of do the paperwork and keep track of who was like ordering things. So he would pop in, and he doesn't do Facebook. He doesn't understand clothes. So people loved him because he was a little clueless. But our work schedules have now changed, so he doesn't help me as much, but like he was a great personality, like, because he's so just fun. Like, I don't get it. Like, why are we on Facebook? Like, am I live? Like, what? He's also, and he's also partially colorblind. So he'd be like, these are blue, and people would be typing, no, those are green, So he was great. It was like a fun, like, little bit of a family adventure.
That's so funny. So with the boutique now, are they all your own designs, or do you curating designs?
I'm curating.
Okay.
I'm curating through a whole bunch of different sources.
Okay.
So I try to do a lot of smaller sources. There are a lot of great like makers that do smaller batch stuff. So it's not the same stuff you're going to find on Amazon. You make great mugs that are really unique. We had some like mother-in-law mugs. That's literally what they were.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like that, we still have a couple, but things like that are a little bit more unique or fun and just kind of fit the boutique. So I spend a lot of time surfing through various wholesale and maker sites looking for what I think people want.
I have to imagine it's a little bit fun.
Oh my God, it's so much fun. It's hard to not get everything. I'm like, well, someone might want these leggings. I'm like, okay, I got to pick like one pair. I can't carry everything. I don't have time. It is,
like work is playtime.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, and when my husband gets involved, he's like, those are great. And I'm like, okay, the minimum 600. I don't need 600 pairs of leggings. He doesn't quite always understand the business. He's like, what if you have me salt? And I'm like, and then I'll have no time for the kids. That defeats the whole purpose of this whole thing.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, he's great. He really is like very supportive, but he's an attorney. This is not his thing. This is not at all like what it's so far beyond him, as is like his job to me, really. So he's super supportive and super, fun we share a desk sometime, but not always realistic to what my small business is. This is not a large business. This is a small business, and purposely so I can hang out with my kids most of the time.
I love that. So some of our audience I know have reached out to me, and they're thinking about starting their own business. They're working through some of those fears that you do before you start a business of, is this the right thing? And all the things you have to go through before you pull the trigger. Is there any advice that you would have for that mom who is thinking about it and maybe struggling with some fear or different obstacles to work through?
Yeah. I mean, I think you start and then you adjust as necessary. When I started, I thought I was going to do a lot of in-home and vendor events and, there's a ton of vendor events in our neighborhood for Christmas, Hanukkah, and back to school. And I thought I'd do those. And I thought I'd do, in-home parties. Well, it turns out that totally dysregulates my son. It screws up the whole kind of how we work as a household. And it was not really the best use of my time to sit at a vendor event for 2 days. So I just completely adjusted and went to a almost entirely online business. So I think really being flexible. The initial goals I set just weren't realistic, and now I have totally different goals. I initially didn't even have a Shopify site. I only had a Facebook page. So I really had to adjust what I thought was going to be my goal to what really was realistic. Yeah, I mean, some of it you jump in. Like I don't remember when I made the decision to start either of these ventures, but I'm sure it probably wasn't well thought out on like 9 a.m. on a Monday. It was at like 11 p.m. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I did that once with a marathon. I registered for a marathon at like 11:30 p.m. Woke up the next morning and said, did I really do that? And I feel that was a little bit with both of these. And, because that's the time that you're like, let your guard down and just let the doubts go away. Just
do it.
Just start. Yeah, honestly, just start, and then just be really willing to adjust. Because this grand idea to go to vendor events and do in-home, and it was going to be fun. I was going to meet people, turned out to just not be what worked for me or my family. And now I run an entirely online business, and it's still been, great for my family, but definitely the initial plan did not work. So I adjusted.
I 100% love that advice and completely agree with it. Moms of Heart is not at all what I originally thought it was going to be. And it's not, it changes almost on a weekly basis of like what the vision looks like. I feel like we're starting to get more of a consistent long view goal of who our target audience is. That hasn't changed in a few weeks now. And some of the bigger projects that I'm just starting to do now to plan for that are coming up in like June of next year. And even I've got a big project that I'm planning for September of next year, but I'm not saying what's happening yet. But big things that, solidifying that it's making sense now. But back in February, I never had any of these ideas for starters, but also like I wouldn't have even known that I could have had these ideas. So I agree with you. Just start, because your ideas and what it'll actually look like changes with you as you grow. And I think that's the best part about having a business is it's like an extension of yourself. And
yes,
that's kind of cool too, that it's like, it's all you. It's like when you're working for someone else, you're working under someone else's vision. And sometimes that just feels incompatible. Whereas when it's your own business, you make it compatible with you, which is awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. My blog, I should say, was actually a general lifestyle blog when it started.
Okay.
And then I just kept writing about what I wanted to write about. And I'm like, oh, this is not where I thought the blog would go.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that. That this was I was going to be this great like lifestyle sort of parenting blogger. And I'm like, this is not what I want to write about. So I just kept writing the articles I wanted to write about. I'm like, oh, this isn't the blog I expected. But I'm super happy with it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for chatting with me. I hope that we've inspired some parents, and we'll definitely have links in the show notes to your IEP planner and to your boutique. And really, I'm gonna tag some things on Instagram too because they're just too cute. So people will know what's on my Christmas wish list. That might actually be the only way to get my husband's attention too.
Tag your husband.
Yes.
Yeah. I do that sometimes.
Yes.
I send just emails that have no subject that have things in them. But thank you so much for having me. It was
put
so
a really
much
big
fun.
hint on there because he's not that. He'll be like, "Why'd you tag me in this picture?"
So I've learned my lesson from past interviews that sometimes the after conversation has some really valuable nuggets. So I've continued to leave the recording going while we talk after we say, okay, bye-bye, we're all done for the recording. And this time I'm really glad I did because we circled back around to talking about our kids. And I thought you might enjoy eavesdropping on this portion of our conversation as well. So I've included it, but it's a little bit more candid because when we were talking, we didn't talk with the intention of having you listen. But I hope you enjoy it anyways.
Yeah, no, I have so much respect for Heart Mamas because I feel like what you do is so acutely terrifying. Like like what I do, nothing is like that. Like nothing's like just a moment of panic. It's sort of it's like anxiety all the time, but there's no like surgery. Like I can't.
Well, so respect on both ends because to me, I feel like it's so much easier. Like surgery is done. And yeah, this last week I've had some flashbacks and stuff, which has been really challenging to work through because you feel like you're living through it, but I'm looking at him and he's fine. So it's like, why am I feeling this way? So that's been kind of a challenge to work through.
Sure.
But in general, like I don't have the constant feeling like I have to walk on eggshells around all the time with my child of like, how can I make sure that he's having like a good life experience?
Right.
And like, it's just a different experience altogether because he works with OT and PT. They always say like they love working with my son because he's neurotypical and that's rare for them to work with neurotypical kids. And so it's like, then I think, oh, I just can't even imagine like watching some of the autistic kids that come into the clinic. I'm just for their parents, like have a child who doesn't talk and they're 12, like I can't.
Yeah.
I love talking to my son and he's not even 2 yet. So the emotional journey I think is very different, but I think definitely like respect on both ends,
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. No, it's just
journey.
Yeah. No, it's not. Ours has been interesting because the twins now know something's up, which I haven't figured out how to deal with that. That's like our next thing is like I need to talk to our social worker.
So
and
I know
need
in
to
the
talk
CHD community, there's a lot of books for like how to talk with siblings, and I think there's a lot of autism ones. Cause I've even seen some at our library of like how to talk to your kids about like the kid at school who has autism or things like that.
But here's our first issue. My son doesn't know he has autism.
Oh, okay. So you have to have
so that's our
him.
He's starting to be self-aware. He was in a special camp program, but it was part of a mainstream camp. So he's like we just kind of are like, I don't know.
Everybody needs to have that conversation.
Like, well, it's hard because he's like sometimes passes for neurotypical. So I didn't want to like make him.
Like his therapy is work, and that's awesome.
Yes, absolutely. It is but I think that he almost struggles more because sometimes he passes for neurotypical until he doesn't. No, that's step one. I've been putting that off because I think he didn't have he didn't understand well enough.
Yeah.
Like that it was, I think he knows he has specialty, but like what it means.
Yeah.
Is what he doesn't understand yet. So
which I feel like
one.
if you frame it in the right way, rather than it being like something's wrong with me, it's more empowering of like, now I understand this about myself. And so I can take on the world because I just know I need to approach the world in a different way. And I know this about myself. And so now I'm like empowered to do the things I want to do.
Right. Well, we were worried to tell him when he was younger that he would use it kind of as a crutch.
Yeah.
But now I think you're exactly right. He will understand that he understands he's different. I can't say he doesn't know. He doesn't know the term.
Yeah.
He doesn't know he has a label,
Yeah.
which I hate to give him a label to begin with, because
I have a feeling I'm going to get some good responses about the IEP portion of the conversation, because I haven't had anybody who's felt experienced enough to talk about that. So we might have to bring you back on, or maybe your mom, or maybe both of you or something, to talk about that a little bit more in depth.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's for people who go through it, there's so much. Unfortunately, a lot of it is very specific to what state and district you live in, which is what makes it so difficult, is you can't just Google.
Right.
You can't, I was trying to Google I didn't know how many days from the time I requested evaluation to the time they had to give me my evaluation. This is actually for my twins. Yeah. My twins have speech delay.
Okay.
And we were at 31 days. And I'm like, was it 30 or 60? I tried to Google it. It's like, I Googled Illinois, and it took forever. I'm like, you can't even, because every district and everything's different. And there's so many little, and some of it is very much the same. How you deal with it is the same.
Yeah.
But all these little laws and stuff, which can be really overwhelming, are different. So
I think ultimately my goal is to help moms feel empowered with the special needs world,
yes.
To not feel overwhelmed by it.
I really enjoyed chatting with Laura from Messy Bun Life and Messy Bun Boutique so much today, and I hope that you've enjoyed eavesdropping on our conversation. If you have enjoyed eavesdropping on our conversation, be sure and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. That way you get notified when new episodes post. For the show notes and all the resources that we talked about in this episode, a lot of times you can just scroll down on whatever app you're listening to, or if you head over to momsofheart.com/ and then the episode number. So this episode is episode 15. So it'll be momsofheart.com/015, and that'll give you links to all the resources we talked about. And then on my website, you can find so much more. Lots of tools and resources, access to my private Facebook group where you can connect with other moms of kids who are going through similar journeys that you are on. So if you want to plug in and get connected, head over to momsofheart.com where you can find all the things. And if you really enjoyed this episode and thought of somebody who might also enjoy it while you were listening, take a screenshot of the episode and send it to them and let them know what you thought. Now, if you have listened for any amount of time, I'm terrible at goodbyes. So until next time, mamas, I'll find you on social media.